Yesterday, he comes in and starts saying things like, I took an oath to protect the Constitution. He brought up First Amendment. Did he say First? There's a little confusion whether he said First Amendment or Second Amendment in the courtroom. They are trying to tailor their prosecution to these jury questions. That's what we knew they were doing with the jury questions all along. They're trying to push this through, and we're hoping that the jury will see through it. Absolutely.
Another thing, all the witnesses say they don't know what time it was.
Yes, that's the other thing, is they've all been... All right, we're back. Well, hopefully this will work. Okay, so first government calls Ranger Edwin Whitaker. He is with the BLM. He was previously a U.S. Border Patrol and ATF. What I am finding out here is the federal government has created their own standing army. They have created these people who are used to dealing with non-American citizens on the border. They're heavy-handed. They are either Secret Service, Border Patrol, ATF. This is not what you think of when you think BLM. Me living in rural Idaho, when I think BLM, I think someone who's going to come out and make sure that I've got the right amount of birds for my duck hunting, make sure I'm using the correct shot. I do not think of a Border Patrol agent ready to take my life. That is what the BLM is nowadays. That is what the Park Service is. And it seems that it is going at an alarming rate.
It would seem to me the Park Service has gotten very unfriendly lately. Gloria Navarro, sitting on the federal bench of the Ninth Circuit, as good a prostitute as any you will find in the Ninth Circuit federal court system. Gloria Navarro, on orders, it's like this. Harry Reid says, I need to get rid of the Bundy ranchers. I got rid of 52 with federal regulations and harassment, but the Bundys won't cave in. Gloria, if I recommend to Obama that you be given a federal judgeship, will you promise me you will put them away when I get them on trial, and you will send out the troops and we'll get them? Will you do that, Gloria? Gloria says, oh, sure, Harry. I'd just love to do that for you, Harry. Who's Harry? Harry Reid is a senior U.S. Senator whose son, Rory Reid, just might have been governor of Nevada. Ding, 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 ding. And just might have been working with the EN Corporation, which is a communist-controlled energy company out of communist China. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, bells and whistles should be going off in your head right now. So there's Gloria. And so Harry says, don't worry, honey. We'll get you that appointment. You just put away the Bundys. And Gloria says, okay, Harry. So on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2009, Harry sends in the recommendation to the Select Committee and the President that Gloria Navarro is worthy of a federal judgeship because she's going to help me get rid of the Bundy ranchers. Get this recommendation on Christmas Eve. Now, of course, the Bundys broke no laws. It was the BLM breaking the laws, and your corporate media doesn't want you to understand that. That's why there's no news about it. Because if they honestly covered it, you'd say, what the heck? Write our congressman, have that prostitute known as Judge Gloria Navarro indicted and removed from office. She should be impeached. She was put there specifically to get the Bundys. It was a deal. When you can get a federal judgeship just so you can destroy a 4-generation ranching family in Nevada or any part of America, something is wrong, people. But if you, the people, don't know it, so thanks for watching. Listen to the Bundy's official story. I'm William Wagner. September 19th. Thanks for tuning in.
Or should we have just let federal agencies take our heritage? Ask yourself, what would have you done? Ask yourself what is right. Let me explain our story. My brothers and I grew up on a family cattle ranch in southern Nevada, established by our great-great-grandfathers in 1877. We were raised in humble circumstances in the same little ranch home as our father, Clive Bundy, built by my grandfather Dave in the 1940s. For 5 generations, our family has run cattle along the Bunkerville Mountains. Our ancestors were the first pioneers to settle in the southern Nevada desert. They carved their living out of leveling and farming land next to the Virgin River and ran cattle on the hills. Their homesteads were established before Las Vegas had even one person living in it. Nevada had only been a state for 13 years. Discovering multiple springs on the foothills of the mountains, our forefathers began to build water troughs and holding tanks to supply water for cattle. This made it so the cattle did not have to travel too far for water. In the arid desert where a ranch is, it takes approximately 100 acres to feed one cow. In his lifetime, my father has improved upon this watering system by installing pipes throughout the lower hills from 11 different water sources over a 30-mile span. This has allowed the cattle to benefit from feed in areas where otherwise they could not live because they would have to walk too far for water. This has also greatly benefited the desert wildlife and made hunting and camping plentiful. As a true environmentalist, my father, by expanding the water system and caring for the land and the road, has tremendously promoted wildlife, increased game, improved camping, and generally made the area more enjoyable to be on. Even the desert tortoise would thank Clive and Bundy for the water close by if they could speak. All of this is done at my father's expense and effort, costing the taxpayers nothing. With his banged-up Dodge pickup, my father would spend many days a month blowing out the water lines with air and repairing the leaks, making sure each water tank was always full. My family has brought life to the southern Nevada desert for over 100 years. Imagine what would happen to all the wildlife if this watering system was not maintained or if it was destroyed. Before I move on, it is important that you have a little more background about the legality of our water and grazing rights. In 1890, the state of Nevada created a registry so that ranchers and others could deed their water and grazing rights. In Nevada, as with other western states, the livestock watering rights include title to graze. Each deed in print designates how many cattle the owner of the deed is typically grazing around the water. This is the way grazing rights are recorded and protected by the state of Nevada. Just to be clear, these livestock grazing and water rights are vested property, much like mineral rights or deeded rights to your home. These grazing rights are real property. They can be sold, traded, borrowed against, or adversely taken. They are the lifeblood of our ranch and are a valued heritage to our family. Many people have desired to purchase them over the years, but my father has chosen to remain raising cattle in the desert. Without these stock water grazing rights, our ranch has almost no value. My father owns 11 of these stock water grazing rights, deeded with the state of Nevada. In the early 1990s, the Bureau of Land Management, also known as the BLM, an agency of the executive branch, tried to trespass my father for grazing cattle on our deeded range, where my family has run cattle for 138 years. The BLM adopted an extreme environmental no-cattle policy designed to remove all ranching from the land. On the wall in the Southern Nevada BLM district office, they displayed their motto. It read, "No moo by 92, cattle free by 93. Seeing their intent to destroy his ranch, my father stood on the fact that his ranch was inside the boundaries of the state of Nevada, that the federal agencies are violating the constituted laws between the state and the federal government, and that he owns a deeded right to graze and water his cattle, established over a century ago. When agents from the Bureau of Land Management told my father that the federal government does not recognize his grazing rights and that my father must remove his cattle, he told them that they had no authority to take his family's heritage away. When they said they were going to take it away anyway, he said no, and then he said hell no. Several times the Bureau of Land Management tried to drag my father into federal court so they could strip him of his rights, like they have done with thousands of others. Being land inside the state of Nevada, not ceded to the federal government, my father held the constitutional position that federal agencies have no legal constituted authority to administer the land inside the state, and therefore no jurisdiction to trespass or prosecute him. Watching other ranchers, miners, loggers try to defend themselves in federal court when the federal government was the plaintiff, my father often said, Going into federal court to defend yourself against federal agencies is like as if a man broke into your home and beat up your wife and children. So to get justice, you take him to court. When they say all arise to the honorable judge, in walks a man in a black robe, and he is the very man that assaulted your wife and children. Of over 100,000 cases in the western states where the federal government is the plaintiff in federal court, federal judges have sided with federal agencies every single time, taking century-old vested property rights away from good, hard-working families. In our area, my dad is the last rancher out of 53. In the state of Nevada alone, federal agencies have taken 5,072 water rights from the people and deeded them to themselves. It is astonishing to think about this when the United States Constitution was specifically designed to prohibit this very thing from happening. We, the people, have ignorantly allowed federal agencies of the executive branch to be modern-day conquerors, gobbling up our land and resources and inserting themselves into every facet of our lives. Our homes, our schools, our churches, our jobs, our industries, our manufacturing industries, our housing industries, our agricultural industries, our mineral industries, our financial industries. Everywhere there is wealth, they seek to control and take. They will not stop expanding and growing on their own. They will not limit themselves because they do not produce a product. In order for them to survive and gain and grow, they must take from the people who produce a product. The judicial branch of government, the courts and the judges, have not been an effective check and balance to these agencies for over 60 years, giving them a free pass to prey upon the wealth of the American people. U.S. Congress has tried to stop them twice in the last decade by defunding them. We saw through this that the executive agencies are too powerful for even the United States Congress to limit. So how did people come to know about the Bundy family, my family? Well, in April 2014, the BLM joined forces with 4 other federal agencies to enforce their unlawful trespass and destroy our ranch. They set up a massive military-like compound on the range. With 200 hired guns, mercenaries, they surrounded our ranch and put it under siege. They began to brutally round up our cattle with helicopters, running them to death, shooting them from the air, and leaving the newborn cows out on the range to thirst to death or to be eaten by coyotes. The dead cattle were dumped into mass graves dug by federal backhoes. They also began destroying the water infrastructure that had been established over 100 years ago. Our family was threatened by BLM personnel that said, if we resisted in any way, this would be another Waco or Ruby Ridge. Knowing beforehand the abuses that they were about to cause would bring public outcry, the BLM built 2 First Amendment areas in non-conspicuous places and threatened the public with arrest and federal charges if anyone protested outside these areas. Our family, friends, and other local people began to brutally round up our cattle with helicopters, running them to death, shooting them from the air, and leaving the newborn cows out on the range to thirst to death or to be eaten by coyotes. Began to brutally round up our cattle with helicopters, running them to death, shooting them from the air, and leaving the newborn cows out on the range to thirst to death or to be eaten by coyotes.